4, when shadows start to fall. That was unnecessary. Wayne spoke quietly, but his fists were clenched. Did you have to humiliate her like that? Ty looked surprised. What's your problem, man? This is Africa. She is ugly, she will be used to it. You surprise me, Ty. And you, who are you to judge me, son of a slave? I shouted Ty suddenly. Ty. Stop it. Ty's mother stood, ladle in her hand, looking frightened. It's all right, said Wayne. I'll put his lack of judgment down to the strength of the palm wine. But note I am sober when I say that you, Ty, have the appearance of one who would exchange pure African gold for worthless glass beads. A lie for a calabash full of palm wine and an African dream for a pseudo-American nightmare. I didn't expect to find people like you here, Ty burst into loud laughter. Wayne picked up his jacket. Good night, he said as he walked off into the dark night. He was furious. He had only caught a brief glance of her before she had run off in the darkness, but he had seen nothing that merited Ty's insulting behavior. He walked on, deep in thought, hands plunged in his pockets. He paused briefly at the path that led to the river, listening to the crickets sing and the night birds sing. He was about to turn away when a blinding light shot across the sky. He exclaimed incredulously, he had never seen a shooting star. At the same instant he thought he heard a shout. His feet carried him of their own volition to the mossy banks and his heart almost stopped when he saw her. Her arms flapped wildly, and she gasped for breath. Hold on. Wayne plunged into the dark, treacherous waters. The powerful current sucked him under. He fought, won, and surfaced. She was within arm's length. He reached out for the limp body and swam with her to the bank. The moon came out and for a fleeting second cast its light on her grey face. It was she, the girl who danced with the wind. He could not get out fast enough. He dragged Tasmil onto the bank, rolled her on her side and tried to press out the water. Her lifeless arms lolled out on the grass, cold and wet. Wayne turned her over and checked her airway and her breathing. His warm lips touched her cold ones as he gently extended her head back and breathed his own air into her lungs. He watched her chest rise and fall, rise and fall. Come on, he muttered under his breath. Again, he lowered his head, pinching her nostrils closed so that the air flowed straight into her lungs. Life, he cried. Come on. The moon must have come out from behind a cloud for a sudden light poked silver fingers through the darkness. Tasmil spluttered and coughed. She sat up and stared into Wayne's eyes. You're okay. You're going to be okay, he cried. She stared at him, her eyes wild and frightened. Come on, I'll help you up. She grabbed his arm and shook it violently. Her mouth opened but the only sound was a strange, painful gagging. She pointed to her mouth and stared at him, terror mirrored in her eyes. Wayne felt a cold shiver go down his back. He grabbed her by the shoulders. Relax, don't try to speak, he said. Tasmil trembled. He scooped her up into his arms and ran with her up the dark path past the fruit trees and through the night, to the village center, to find out where she lived. The village crier tore through the streets with the news and the village fell deathly quiet. The villagers called on Ophibia in their numbers, leaving gifts of sacks of corn, rice, fruit, fowls and vegetables. Kwesi lingered, straining to hear what was being said. When he heard, he waited outside the little house, hoping to catch a glimpse of Ophibia. Tasmil lay on a coconut-filled mattress clenching the bamboo bedpost and watching the green palm-potted plants swing from the window. The gentle orange-scented breeze flowed over her. Ophibia and Afua spoke in the kitchen in low voices. They had no idea what could have happened. Had Tasmil in despair flung herself into the dark waters of the Wayemi? Never. Ophibia was adamant. She would never do that. Afua pursed her lips. That Ty has a lot to answer for. Ophibia stared out of the window. I don't know what to do. She just stares at me, trying to tell me things, but she cannot. It is not the end of the world, at least she is alive, my sister. No, it is the end of her dream. My God, she cannot speak. Afua kept silent. She stared at the soup boiling on the coal pit and her heart went out to her friend. Tasmil lay on her back staring at the ceiling. She opened her mouth to try again. Nothing happened, no sound, nothing. She felt alien, powerless, helpless. She dragged herself to the mirror that hung against the burnt brick wall and tried again. Frustrated, angry and afraid, she threw herself back on the bed. Ophelia stood in the doorway. Her eyes mirrored Tasmil's feelings. She waited until Tasmil lifted her head. Then she came closer, and they embraced each other. "Get some rest, child," she said, "and try not to worry. Things will sort themselves out, you'll see. Tasmil nodded. Ophelia sat beside her on the bed, her hand resting gently on the girl's arm. It felt as though a dark cloud had settled permanently over them. It seemed as though they were stuck in the longest, darkest tunnel and they could see no light. Kwesi hung around. Nothing seemed to move inside the Yancey household. He hoped they would let him see Tasmil. His heart felt sad and still. He played with the blades of the grass as he waited for his mother to come out and give him the news. "Good morning, Kwesi." Kwesi jumped. Wayne was in front of him, the gold sun on his back. He was dressed in a colorful green and orange shirt with embroidery around the neck. "Wayne, have you come to see me?" Tasmil cannot speak. She has lost her voice. "Thank you for saving her." Wayne frowned. "How is she?" "I do not know. Her mother has not called me in yet. Ask her if I may visit Tasmil, please." Kwesi did not reach the door before it opened. Ophelia stood in the doorway. She did not speak. She only nodded and beckoned Wayne in. "Please." Kwesi pleaded. "Can I come in? I want to speak to her." Ophelia looked sad. "You know she cannot speak, Kwesi. Go home. Tomorrow she will be able to see you. She needs time and rest." But Kwesi frowned. "No, please. Have you forgotten, Aunt Ophelia, that Tasmil taught me to lip read when I had trouble at school, and then she taught me the silent language? Have you forgotten? The silent language. The language she sings with, the language she dances with, the silent language." Ophelia took her breath in suddenly. She looked at Wayne. "Kwesi is partially deaf. Tasmil devised some language some years ago to communicate with him." Wayne looked from Ophelia to Kwesi. "I need to speak to Tasmil, Miss Yancey. Mother Ophelia is my name. Mother Ophelia, I need to speak to Tasmil. I have heard that she knows Kibaitia inside out, and as I am a stranger, Ophelia's nostrils flared. Listen. My daughter lies speechless. She cannot be disturbed, least of all to give a foreigner a tour of Kibaitia. Why don't you come back some other day, eh? It really would be best." Wayne took a deep breath. "I am no stranger." Kwesi looked up. There was something in Wayne's voice that filled him with a strange sense of anticipation. "You may have been to this part before," began Ophelia, "but you are a stranger to Kibaitia. You will find many of the villagers willing to take you around and show you the river and the hills. I thank you for saving my daughter's life. I am truly grateful, but please, leave my daughter alone." A muscle in Wayne's neck tightened. "Mother Ophelia, I am not a stranger to Kibaitia. My blood is as your blood. My ancestors belonged to this ancient village of Kibaitia. Generations of surviving in a foreign land, with foreign names, adapting to staying alive, rising from the status of American slaves, has taught us to value where we come from. My great-grandmother, when I was a child, told me stories of a land, a great land called Africa. She spoke of the untamed western coast with the white sands and rugged black rocks. She spoke of the lush green forests, the blue mist hanging, and of the people of a small, remote village called Kibaitia." He paused and looked around. "She told me of a land where the air was free, the water was free, and we were free, not slaves of the white man or slaves of poverty, but free. She told me her grandfather had been Ohin of Kibaitia and had told her stories of the Wayemi and the festivals. His pride had been his skill in his gold weights. He had owned so many of them. My great-grandmother was of royalty, Mother Ophelia, yet she lived in the slums of the Bronx. She had only one room and 5 children. Her husband was killed in the South, and she raised those 5 children single-handed. Do you know how? Because she never forgot who she was. Years later she left the slums and poverty of the Bronx, and she came to live with me and my parents in California. I remember when she was going, she called me to her side and spoke again of the dream she had had many times. Ophelia stared at the man and, in spite of herself, she leaned forwards. What was her dream? She wanted one of us to return here one day, to stand in Kibaitia and shout, "I am alive. I survived. They did not kill me, they could not kill me. I have returned to claim my inheritance, this is my land." He stopped and reached into his pocket. But more than that, she wanted me to return this back to Kibaitia, back to the grave of my great-great-grandfather. The gold form glistened in the sun. Ophelia held out her hand. What is it?" she whispered, although she knew. "It's a gold weight," said Kwesi. "Tasmil taught us about the gold weights. It is real." Wayne nodded. "It was a miscast. It was too small to be used, and my great-grandfather managed to take it away with him to America for a reminder of what he was, not a slave nor less human than the next man but the son of a king and Ohin. The weight has been passed through our family so that we will never forget who we are, so that one day my great-grandmother's dream would come true." There was silence, so thick that you could cut it with a knife. Ophelia said nothing. She stared at the gold watch. "Can I come in, please? I need to speak to Tasmil." Ophelia stepped aside. Wayne smiled in thanks and Kwesi followed him. Tasmil stood at the doorway of her room. She looked grey and tense, but her features relaxed when she saw Kwesi. She held out her arms to him. Her eyes fixed on Kwesi's, her hands began to move in a strange and mystic way. Kwesi answered in the same fashion. Her eyes widened, she turned sharply and stared at Wayne. It was the most astonishing display of silent communication that Wayne had ever seen. He was so caught up in the beauty of it that he forgot to ask what was going on until Tasmil emphatically shook her head and turned her back on them both. "What does she say?" Tasmil flew into a fury of signs. "She says she is not deaf, you may speak directly to her." Wayne dropped his gaze. "Forgive me, Tasmil. I believe Kwesi has explained the situation to you." She replied in sign language and then walked to the window. Kwesi shrugged with a sigh. "What? What does she say?" "The graves of the dead chiefs are sacred places. What you ask is not possible. She is sorry but she cannot help you." Wayne's lips thinned. He stared at the obstinate head at the window. He strode up to her and turned her to face him. "I have traveled many miles, Tasmil. All I want is to take this back to its rightful place, to make the dream come true." She says, "How do we know you have not come to plunder the graves of the royal dead? Everyone knows the Ohins of the forest were buried with their gold and their wealth. How do we know you are who you say you are?" "You don't know? There's no way I can prove it to you." Tasmil thought a little. She signed to Kwesi. She says, "If your ancestors were of the royal family, then you must in some way be related to Ohin Ofori. The line of royalty is through Mogia, the blood of the woman. Wayne looked blank. Tasmil suddenly looked interested, and signed furiously. Kwesi looked alarmed. "She wants you to wait a while. She wants to accompany you to Ohin Ofori." "I thought she didn't believe me." "Oh? What for goodness sake is she saying now?" Kwesi looked confused. "Goodness sake. It is just an expression." "What does she say?" "She says that if you speak about her as though she is deaf one more time she will no longer communicate with you." Wayne gave an exaggerated sigh. "Tell her I under." He caught a furious glare from Tasmil and stopped himself. "I mean, I understand, Tasmil. Yes, I think going to the chief might be a good idea." In the kitchen Afua found the plantain, and stirred the bean stew with vigor. Ophelia, who had been eavesdropping shamelessly, rushed in. "She's up." "What do you mean up?" "I thought she was going to have a good sleep." "You haven't let that crazy American disturb her, have you?" "I know his story sounds very fantastic, but he's got Tasmil's interest, I can tell. Perhaps it will help her to get better quicker. These people, muttered Afua, who do they think they are?" They come here not only claiming to be our long-lost relatives, but also to be royalty. Ophibia tested the beans too. Too much salt, were glad. You know, went on Ophibia, when Tasmil devised that language, I thought it was pure rubbish. I thought it would never take off. I don't know how she did it, but it certainly worked. Kwesi's schoolwork picked up so much. Exactly, but we all thought it was a silly idea. What point are you trying to make, Ophibia? I just think we should not be too judgmental about the American. Perhaps his mind is a little confused, but I think he means well after all he did save Tasmil. Tasmil is like a fish in water, and she knows the riverbanks like the back of her hand. How did she slip in? That's what I want to know. That's enough, Afua. I will not listen to the evil slander of your tongue. You have no proof of what you are saying. And he has no proof that he is from Kibaitia. Okay, so he has an ancient gold weight, but it proves nothing. Ophibia sniffed to show how unaffected she was by Afua's strong remarks, but deep inside she was very worried. What was to become of them? Ofori sat in his cot listening listlessly to the royal singers. He was tired and very unhappy. He had sat through a couple of domestic disputes and received the news that Tasmil, the daughter of Yansi, had nearly drowned and had strangely lost her voice. The people were saying it was the revenge of the Waemi. Others said she had angered the fierce waters. Ofori did not know what to think. It was strange, and he was too tired to think of a logical reason to give the people. He sighed heavily when one of the chief guards entered the court barefoot and an anxious twitching look on his face. Ohin. His head touched the ground. Speak, Kokori. There is a woman she wishes to speak with you. What is it about, Kokori? I am tired. She will speak to no one but to you. What is her name? She is the old midwife, Abrua Nti. Ohin Ofori sighed. Tell her to come back tomorrow. The servant disappeared only to reappear with a more harassed look about him. Ohin, she says, with respect, that her hair is white and tomorrow she may have joined the ancestors. She wishes to speak to you if she may today. Ohin Ofori clenched his jaw and clapped his hands for the singers to leave the court. Tell her to give the message to you if she wishes to speak to me. Kokori knelt and kissed the ground again. Ohin, she is very frail. She begs to speak to you today. I am not worthy to carry the message. Ohin Ofori glared at his servant. Do you presume to advise me, Kokori? No, Ohin, only to beg on Abrua's behalf. She is my mother's sister. Ohin Ofori looked even more irritated. Do you think I do not know that? Am I not chief of Kibaitia? Yes, Ohin, forgive me. Send her in and bring a calabash of water to me. Abrua took slow, careful steps supported on the thick, well-designed stick. She sighed and moaned as she came closer. Her breathing was heavy and labored. She stood before him and then bowed slightly. He held out his arm to beckon her closer. Ohin, I thank you. Speak, old one. Tell me what it is that ails you. I come to tell you to prepare for our sons and our daughters, our sisters and brothers who are coming home, Ohin, so that you will know them when they come and that you will recognize them, and not be confused. Our brothers and sisters. Those who do not speak our tongue or know our ways. Those who may appear as strangers but are really children of our Africa. What are you raving on about, old woman? Have you forgotten the ancient songs? They warn us that those we lost will return someday and we are to help them find what they seek. They will come back to their once mighty lands, once flourishing kingdoms, only to find the ruins of the anarchy that is left and a world that does not know them. Who are you speaking of? The ones our ancestors sold to the exploiters, the ones they exchanged for glass beads and the white man's wine. The ones who did not die, the ones who did not forget who they were. Speak not of the ancestors if you mean to insult them. I only speak what I know. They took our people, Ohin. But some of them will come back home. I come to inform you, Ohin. Do not forget the ancient songs of Kibaitia, the songs the ancestors sang with broken hearts when their world began to change. You are an old woman. They are coming, Ohin, remember. Some of them are sons and daughters of royalty. They took the gift that Africa gave them and they released them 1,000-fold. Gads. Gads. Ohin. Take the old woman away. Advise her relatives to place her in her bed. Yes. Ohin. Abrua spoke. The time has come, Ohin. I feel it in my bones. Take her away. Let her rest. Peace be with you, Ohin. I go now across the waters. Do not forget what I have told you. Give to them their inheritance, for Africa belongs to all our children, even to her stolen children. Ohin Ofori watched her leave. He remembered when she was young. Now her mind was wandering, and he felt sorry that she seemed so weak. Kokori, take her the calabash. Kokori hurried after the old woman. Ofori was troubled. He did not understand what Abrua was talking about. Why was she speaking in riddles? He really was tired, and his mind was very troubled. Kokori returned. She gives you her blessings, Ohin. Ofori said nothing. Kokori stood behind him, a straight, silent and respectful servant. And somewhere, the waters of the Wayemi sang a strange and sad song, a song of mourning and lamentation, a song of the rape of Africa, a song of the sorrow of divisions and barriers. Tasmil turned sharply and laid a hand on Wayne's arm. She placed her hand to her ear. You want me to listen? She nodded. To what? He frowned. She pursed her lips and signed to Kwesi. She says you have thick palm oil in your ears, giggled Kwesi. I think she's wonderful too. I think you're wonderful too. Stop, listen. Distant drums beat. They were powerful and strong. Something in them sent a cold shiver down Wayne's back. Are they the talking drums? Tasmil looked at him severely. She communicated with Kwesi. They are the summoning drums. They mean that before sunset an important message will be given in the town center. We are all to be present. Together they made their way to the court of Ohin Ofori.